Welcome back to Beyond the Headline, everyone. You've chosen a really excited day to join us on the show because I'm here with Jason Maynard, the Executive Vice President of Strategy and Corporate Development at NetSuite. Jason, thank you for being here.
Hey, thank you very much for having me. Excited to be on the show.
You wear a super fun hat at NetSuite, so I want to start out with what your typical day is like.
Wow, my typical day. There is no typical day here at NetSuite. Every day is a new adventure, but no, a lot of what I do is I get up really early.
Good thing, me too.
I'm a morning person, and a lot of it's triaging through a gob of emails and trying to find time to actually think and get real work done versus sort of managing through all the day-to-day stuff. That's a typical day.
Have you figured out a silver bullet for the email?
You just don't reply. No, I'm joking. Somebody told me once, in all seriousness, they said, look, if something's really important to somebody, they'll ping you 2 or 3 times. So, I mean, that could always work. I know there's all these zero inbox, apps and everything. You just don't reply. And then if somebody emails you 2 or 3 times, you know it's important, and then you got to get on it. So I'm half joking. No.
Jason, before we dive into all of the work that you've been doing and the team's been doing, I'd love to find out why now was the right time for you to join the team formally at NetSuite, because you've been working very closely with the company.
Yeah, so I've been an analyst, or I was an analyst on Wall Street for about 15 years, and I covered NetSuite and was part of the IPO team that took them public from the research standpoint. And for me, it was a great time because NetSuite has clearly emerged as the category leader for cloud ERP. But at the same time, it's not so big that there isn't a lot of exciting things to be done. And so it blended, if you will, scale of being a public company with a lot of startup-like qualities. It's still a fast-moving place. It's a relatively flat organization. I've known Zach and Jim and Evan and Ron and the senior management team for over a decade. So I've got to see these guys operate firsthand, and they're a great group to work with and learn from. So those are all kind of played into my decision.
When you think back to the last year, which we were just saying has gone by so fast for you, are there any stories or experiences that really stand out?
I joke with all my friends from Wall Street who ask me, they're like, what's it like to be on the operating side? And I tell them, I go, it's actually like real work. So unlike Wall Street, which was sort of fake work, this is actually real work. You actually have to get stuff done. So no, it's been an interesting experience because when you work in a company, it's a different pace. Wall Street had some very fast-paced elements to it, but here you've got to make short-term decisions, medium, and ultimately long-term decisions. And so it's trying to balance those out, right, and manage your team and manage the process in terms of how you come to those decisions. That's incredibly interesting and different than from what you have to deal with on the Wall Street cycle, which tended to be 90-day quarter sprints.
I got it. And one of the things that you guys are focused on is always building for the future. When you think of the future of NetSuite, what can we expect to be different in the coming year?
We shared at SuiteWorld in May, I think, some of those elements. And I think the future of NetSuite is making sure that our product technologies help our customers change. And, today business is probably more dynamic and pressure-packed and facing new opportunities, but also how do you mitigate threats? And from a technology standpoint, we're trying to build products and business transactional systems to help them go in whatever direction they want to go. Every company today is probably seeing changes in their business model. And so how do you make an ERP system, which is not normally the most flexible or exciting or sexy thing, really become a tool to help you better manage your business and run your business? And I think that's the future of NetSuite. How do we keep making our products and service offerings align with what our customers need them to do?
There's so many areas that I want to dive in there. And the first one is customization, which, like you were saying, plays a really big role for you guys. So any of your more than 30,000 customers can go in and tailor that last mile of the software, like you shared before. Why is that a core value for you guys?
It's I'm glad you picked up on that because that's one of the parts of the NetSuite story or value proposition I think we need to talk and are talking more about. And the reason it's so important is that in the old days, and not to pick on some of our predecessors, but in the old days, once you implemented an on-premise ERP system, you could never change it, or you have to spend gobs of money to change it. And so the only companies that had really awesome, great systems, were those that would continue to spend lots and lots of money to try and get to squeeze, if you will, all the value out of it. What we've done at NetSuite is make it easy for everyone to tweak the system, customize it. I like your term, using it for the last mile, right? Make it work for your business. And so that was designed in from day one to make the system flexible, that it didn't require, if you will, all of that expensive labor and just sort of time to get value. And so when you think about changes that's happening in business, you can't as a business be held back by your software, right? You can't sit here and say, oh, I can't introduce this new pricing model, or I can't add this new distribution channel or expand into this new international market because my ERP system won't let me, right? And that was sort of one of the design goals, is take that business limiter out of the equation.
Really glad you mentioned flexible and talk about the expansion and why it's so necessary to be able to go when the opportunity presents itself. Because I saw this quote from one of your customers that made me feel a little bit of pressure, but I'm sure ignites you guys, where he said an ERP is not just a system or a thing, but the backbone of a company. Without it, you can't innovate, you can't grow, you can't be flexible, you can't be agile. How does it feel when you hear someone say that?
This is the coolest part of the job, actually, is meeting our customers and hearing what they're trying to accomplish. And it's from whether or not you're a small company trying to figure out, hey, I just raised my first round of funding, and I've got all this pressure to go find product market fit and go get my first 10 customers, all the way to a multi-billion-dollar company that says, hey, we need to be as nimble as that startup that's trying to be a digital disruptor in our industry. And it's the people behind these companies who are trying to change or growing, and the ideas that they have, and how do you bring that idea to life and not have the business system inhibit it, but actually enable what their vision is.
I want to touch on what you were saying about the large companies. You shared in a recent presentation that you often have huge corporations coming to you and asking that question. How do we act agile and nimble like what are considered baby companies with 40 people, 100 people compared to them? How do you respond to that?
It's a funny conversation, and what we end up finding is when we talk to a small customer, they want to learn how to get big, and big being, how do I go global, or how do I enable a business model just like one of my established competitors has. And then when you talk to the big customers, they want to learn how to get small, right? And small being a code word for nimble or agile, right? How do we actually compete against one of those digital disruptors? And so the dynamic in business today, it's not the grass is always greener on the other side, right? It's, in order to compete, you have to have scale, right? And so you don't want to pick a system that limits your ability to grow. At the same time, when you're a large organization and maybe you have more resources, how do you find that system that can enable you to break and tweak or augment and change the model that you have? And I think what's driving the large companies is that in the old days being, say, the 1990s of the last big, re-platforming cycle, the biggest companies had the best technology, right? They could spend all the money on the SAPs of the world, right, and get the best, most modern technology. And the smaller companies didn't have the resources to actually get those systems in place. What's flipped now, and you can call this the consumerization or the democratization of business technology, is the small companies today have the best technology, right? You can be a startup and run a virtual/outsource model. You don't have to buy your own machines. You can build all your apps on something like an AWS or Google, right? And you can move so much faster because we have lowered the barrier to adoption of technology. And so I think that's what drives large companies, is they look and they say, man, you don't have to be, 20 billion in revenue and spend hundreds of $1 millions to get awesome modern omni-channel systems or, a global financial platform. So that's, I think, the big change.
How about for your team internally? What do you guys do to act small to grow even larger?
You know, I can speak in sort of in our group, and maybe broadly across NetSuite. I think the biggest thing that we've done, you can kind of break it into a couple areas. One is on the people front. We have a program to hire in fresh college grads every year. And so, we're bringing in a good percentage of our new workforce straight out of college. And there's two benefits there. One is we get a lot of fresh ideas. We get a lot of enthusiasm. We also train people on NetSuite, and we train them how to work within the NetSuite culture. And so what we get then is a really motivated, ambitious workforce that learn from the ground floor on how we do things. And so by default, then they come in and they're like, well, maybe we should do something differently and we should try this or try that. And I would say having that type of model internally, and especially in the areas that I work around marketing and business development, you just find a lot more creative thinking, right? We're trying not to just do things the way that our predecessors did it. We're trying to say, okay, we're in the cloud, let's take advantage of that. And how can we build programs and how can we build, if you will, outreach to developers or prospects or even customers and do it in a different model. And I think part of that infusion of incoming college grad talent helps us out a lot.
I love that. And specifically in your role, Jason, one of the things you mentioned is marketing and sending different messages to small companies, medium-sized companies, large companies, massive companies. I was really curious for you, how do you constantly shift your mindset to be targeting and working with so many different companies at different sizes?
I think it's all business at the end of the day. Call it what you want, but it's all business, right? It's in a lot of ways, the challenges of the large companies and the small companies are at the core. How do you adapt and change, right? How do you deal with, mitigation of threats? How do you deal with capturing opportunities, right? And so when we think about the problems we're solving and how do you tailor the message, it's around capturing those moments where you say, okay, can you do this new type of business model or pricing model or distribution channel, things of that nature. And then understanding when you're dealing with a smaller organization or an international firm that there's obviously nuances to the persona and the role and the local customs and business, conditions in each region. So that's kind of how we think about it. But we don't lose track of the true north, which is we're a system to help you run your business better, right? And if you just sort of start there and kind of work out, that keeps you in a good spot.
For the small businesses in particular, I know that's one of your guys' initiatives right now is working with them, and then once they get on NetSuite, they can stay on NetSuite, which is wonderful and time-saving for the future. What types of companies, when you say small businesses, are you targeting?
Yeah, we service on the small side, it can be companies with as little as 10, 15 employees. We do have a pretty robust business for, call it 20 to 100 employee size firms. We sell a lot also to venture-backed companies, and we work a lot with the startups. Most IPOs end up running on NetSuite. So we do love those type of businesses. At the end of the day, I always tell folks, NetSuite's the right choice for your business if you think you're going to grow, if you expect change, right? And you've got to deal with a lot of uncertainty in terms of what the externalities or the internalities of your business. And that hits a lot of small companies, right? Because today, being a small business doesn't mean you're just selling in one local region or just selling one simple offering. It can have as much complexity as a larger organization.
It's such a great transition to everything you guys are working on right now with the hybrid model. And so that goes for both the small companies and the really large companies. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the hybrid model is interesting. So one of the big product announcements we rolled out last May was a new product or an enhanced product, if you will, for subscription billing. And the value proposition we think is quite simple, which is if you can sell it, whatever it is, product, time, as a service, a monthly subscription, we can help you bill it in any way and generate the revenue recognition you need. And the value prop there is whatever business model under the sun you can think of, we got you covered. You know what I mean? Whatever crazy idea you have, and maybe it turns into an amazing idea, but whatever you can think of, in terms of if you're going to start selling a product today and maybe you add a service offering to it and maybe you digitize that product and have a component that, makes it, if you will, an app-based model that sits in a Google or Apple, app store, it doesn't matter, right? You shouldn't have to worry about those business model limitations. And that was really the big driver at SuiteWorld and the announcements was, hey, we are going to enable business model innovation to happen and make sure that underlying transactional systems becomes invisible. You don't want to have to worry about that. And so that's what we kind of say, whatever model you've got, we got you covered.
So my new model is going to be hosting Pokemon Go parties in farms. Do you think you can cover that for me?
We got you covered there. In-app purchases, you're doing augmented reality. You see the little red dot and you're in a strawberry field. We'll figure out a way to make that work.
That's why I have to launch now if I've got the software.
You got to launch. Go for it. Don't slow down. This Pokemon thing might be big.
We don't know. I do want to dive in on the team's efforts, Jason, working with so many different types of companies and verticals. You guys are very adamant about supporting all different types of verticals on NetSuite. What's your approach there, and how do you ensure that you're not going way too wide? How do you balance?
Yeah, we had the great fortune or great genius, and I think it was probably a little bit of both, that when NetSuite was founded by Evan Goldberg, he built a system for a product company, a service company, and then also an as-a-service company being NetSuite. And so the first 2 or 3 customers were all in different industries. So we didn't architect this system from day one to say we're only going to solve product-based companies or we're only going to solve professional services firms. So we did the hard work up front and then wrapped some customization around it so it'd be easy for you to change it. And so because of that, we service every industry. I mean, I don't think there's a SIC code out there that we don't cover, okay? But what we've tried to do at NetSuite then, and we're making progress on this, is over the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to see us increasingly verticalize our solutions. So if you're a manufacturer, you're going to have distinct capabilities, right? We have a lot of effort around professional services automation. We've got great technology for software and internet companies. We're doing more for wholesale distributors and retailers because they have a whole unique set of needs, right? Commerce being one big capability. And then, we're segmenting into areas like advertising agencies and media and publishing, right? That's a big growing market that has sort of elements of products and services in terms of how they deliver certain things, their subscription offerings. So we're finding, if you will, those markets that align with some of our core capabilities and putting more resources behind it. And so, there's certain areas we're not going. We're not going after government, right? Federal government type stuff. We're not doing large scale telecommunications companies. We're not doing, money center banks. We're not doing some of those industries, right? So we're going after what I think is a really big swath of, global GDP, but more and more aligning around half a dozen core industries.
I love it. And I think it goes really well into this quote that your CEO, Zach Nelson, had on competition. He said, "Cloud is a religion our competitors have only gotten recently." How do you guys approach competition at NetSuite?
Yeah, it's a good quote from Zach because, when NetSuite was started, everybody thought, the team was crazy. And, people thought they were crazy for a while, right? Especially our competitors, and there's some great quotes if you do some Googling, if you will, of some of our, the digs that our competitors took at us, even as, recently as, say, 4 or 5 years ago. They're all coming around to that. But that said, we don't take competition lightly because everybody now realizes that this is the right approach. What I would say is different today at NetSuite is we don't just sell the value proposition of the cloud. We sell the value proposition of what our technology can enable you to do in your business, right? Drive business model innovation, adapt to change. And so we couldn't do that without the cloud, but we've moved beyond that from a product standpoint to what I'd call higher level capabilities that help you succeed as a business. And so if I think about it, what we do differently today is we're not just selling cloud as the value prop. It's not a cloud versus on-premise sale. It's if you buy NetSuite, we can help you run your business better, right? And I think that's the big difference, whereas some of our competitors are like, hey, how do I take my old product and make it run in a cloud model or some hybrid cloud funky thing that they're doing. Whereas we're trying to, if you will, move up the food chain and add greater value.
Customization, my friends.
There you
Let
go.
everyone tailor the last mile.
I like it.
I'd love to focus, Jason, before we go, on a couple of questions about your journey leading up to NetSuite. Have you had any aha moments or critical turning points along the way that were really meaningful to you?
Well, like I said, I came from, I did almost 15 years on Wall Street. And I would say that for me, coming to NetSuite was a great opportunity, both professionally and personally, because I got to work with an amazing team of folks. But I would say the biggest aha is it's really cool to meet customers, right, after they've gone live or a year or two later, and they're like, gosh, I used to not be able to do this in my business, and thanks to you guys, I can now. Now, I'm not the one who made the, product or, or
They don't need to know that.
I don't get credit. I shouldn't get credit for that, but I love hearing the stories and hearing folks say, gosh, it's so cool that we were able to grow 100% and do it faster than we ever could have, right? Or we can close our books faster, or gosh, we introduced this new product line. And, one customer's like, we expanded into China and we created an entirely new business model and we're driving growth. And now we've hired more people and we're creating jobs. And you're just like, oh my gosh, it's pretty powerful to hear those success stories about what people have been able to accomplish. And, not that we deserve as a company all the credit, but we can get a little bit of credit, or we can at least share in their victory or share in their success. And that's something that I just think is awesome. You don't get that on Wall Street. It's not, that's the big aha moment. It's much more rewarding in terms of what we can help our customers achieve.
Do you have a favorite customer story or one that really stands out?
I have one where I was at a dinner in Amsterdam. It was probably 90 days ago. And I was sitting next to a large customer that was it was a joint venture between two well-known brands. I'll leave the names off to protect the innocent for now. And I said, I go, well, how'd you pick NetSuite? He's like, look, we're competing in a really dynamic environment, and we wanted to be able to move as fast as a startup. And that's how I picked you. And then to the right of me, then I was sitting next to a startup who was designing a product in Amsterdam, manufacturing in Taiwan, and then doing omni-channel distribution. I'm like, how did you pick NetSuite? He goes, well, I want to have as much scale as the guy next to you. And I was like, that's kind of cool, right? Is that we're dealing with the smallest of the small, crazy great idea. He wants to go global and scale and compete in multiple markets. And the big guys are like, I got to move fast, right? I can't be waiting 18 to 24 months to get a system live. I'm going to get you guys up and running in, 2 quarters, and so I can go launch this new joint venture. And I was like, that's kind of awesome. That's pretty cool.
That is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I've got both ends of the spectrum, if you will, at one dinner table. And so that kind of really synthesized, if you will, the whole NetSuite experience for me.
Part of that is a quote that you shared, and I think this was at one of your presentations, maybe even at Suite World, where you said, how do we make our system smarter so work gets done easier? In your own life, Jason, how do you think about that? How do you optimize your time so work gets done smarter?
Well, I think from a product standpoint in NetSuite, we're going to do more. This is the forward-looking comment I'll make. And we talked a little bit about this around how do we make it order smarter, right? Mm-hmm. But part of it is how do you engineer into a transactional system all sorts of interesting, call it predictive analytics, so that some of the decision-making can get made for you, and then you can sort of approve it or decline, if you will, the decision that the machine makes or the system makes, right? And so, I jokingly like to say we've got bots here at NetSuite, right? We've got ERP bots, right? So there's all sorts of bots out there, but we've got little bots that try and make your day a little bit easier as you try and decide, where should you ship a package if you're a manufacturer to which retailer, right? And so I think that's going to be the type of stuff that we do to make people's lives easier, and it'll show up in the systems here at NetSuite as well, right? In terms of how we use it every day, in terms of thinking about customer relationships and things that we have to do to run our business.
I love that. I was actually going to make a joke. Is there something that you guys are going to integrate that can do things for me? Apparently there is.
They're depending on your
stay
industry.
tuned.
Yeah, come to Sweet World next year. We'll have more to say.
Sounds like a plan. Last question for you, my friend. If you could give everyone a fortune cookie with your favorite saying inside, what would you write?
Oh man, fortune cookie with my favorite saying inside.
Totally funny or totally serious? Up to you.
You know, I would say this is a really tricky question. Actually, I think it's funny. One of my favorite movies. Okay, is Fast and the Furious. Okay. And if you know those movies, but they're classics, or at least I think they're classics.
I've seen one, so
you've seen one. Okay. One of the characters in the movie has a number of quotes, but basically he's got a quote that says "Ride or die, remember." It's Dom Toretto, and what he means by that is go for it. Ride or die. Like give it your all, go all in. And so whenever I hear that, I'm like, yeah, ride or die. You just got to go for it and do it. You know what I mean? And
do you say it in his voice?
Ride or die. My best Vin Diesel impersonation. I don't know how far I'll go with that, but check it out. Fast and the Furious, Dominic Toretto. That's the best fortune cookie you're ever gonna get.
I love it, Jason. I told you before we got started, I never thought I'd be as interested in the cloud as I was when I was reading about NetSuite. So thank you for that. We got to touch on the cloud and Pokemon and Vin Diesel. Not typical interview topics.
Hey, I appreciate you're too kind and too generous. So thank you very much. So I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. For everyone who's tuning in, no matter what size business they are, how can they stay up to date with you guys and get started using NetSuite?
Hit us up at netsuite.com or follow us on Twitter at NetSuite, and you can hear and read all about some of the stuff we're doing. And we've got a ton of content up there, so customer videos, and you can kind of hear firsthand from what our customers are doing and saying. So that's probably the best place to start.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Jenna. Appreciate it.